Right now, a snowstorm is impacting the northern Midwest, where we do see a large area of moderate to light snowfall extending through Wisconsin, northern Illinois, and it's pretty much right at Chicago's doorstep at this time. As within the next couple hours, you should expect relatively light to moderate snowfall in the Chicago area, so make sure to watch out for your Saturday evening commute. However, the same storm system is expected to rapidly intensify as it approaches the northeast once it encounters a little bit more instability that's going to be induced by the warmer sea surf temperatures that are associated with the Gulf Stream just off the coast. And we do see some thunder showers as well, which shows that there's a little bit of instability, but this storm system temporarily will weaken before rapidly intensifying as it approaches the east coast. Take a look at the European model forecast. It is highly certain at this point that this storm system will take this general trajectory. Over the past several days, we've been talking about the uncertainty whether the GFS model or the European model will be correct, but it seems like that the scenario for the storm will pretty much fall in between, right between those two scenarios, where it's going to be a little bit further northward than what the European model initially forecast, yet a little bit further the snow will be a little bit further southward than what the GFS model initially anticipated. So it's going to take that middle ground approach where it won't rapidly intensify as fast as the European model, but not as slow as the GFS model, where we do see that the pressure will drop down to 995 millibars by the early Tuesday timeframe, and we will see that this storm will move through the northern Midwest, but the snow will be relatively light for the most part. It's not until it approaches northeast where we're going to see this storm rapidly intensify and really become strong, where we're really going to see those heavier snow bands. But in upstate New York, the western portion of Massachusetts, as well as the northern portion of the north of Vermont and New Hampshire, you need to pay very close attention to snowfall. That's heavy at times, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to be localized areas of over 2 feet of snow. And continuing to move forward with the forecast, it seems like there will be a negative tilt associated with the jet stream, as it seems like both of the computer models are agreeing that there's going to be a jet stream dip that's pronounced enough to create just enough of an unstable environment for a negative tilt in the jet stream to develop, which will mean that the storm will not only intensify even more rapidly, but thanks to the instability, but this will slow down just like the European model been forecasting over the past several days, because it's going to turn to the east just before it moves out. It's going to turn to the west before it eventually drifts to the east along with the westerly winds. So this will move very slowly, and it's going to be a very prolonged event for much of New England and upstate New York. And we see that there's purples associated with this snow band, which represents very heavy snowfall. Over an inch per hour snowfall rates are likely, especially if you're on the higher elevation. So you need to pay very, very close attention to that. And as for the bigger cities, we do see that Boston, in this scenario, at least at this time frame of the forecast, is experiencing entirely a rain event. And for New York City and Philadelphia, the snow is just to the north of you guys, as it seems like the computer models are honing in on bringing the snowfall a little bit, most of the snowfall just north of those cities. But it's only a matter of time before the snow is eventually expected to move a little bit further southward to where the New York City metropolitan area will get involved, such as northern New Jersey and the northern portions of Pennsylvania as well. And eventually the storm will linger, and then we're going to see the storm become a little bit more elongated for the snow to eventually move southward into New Jersey, but I wouldn't expect much snowfall in those areas, including New York City. Maybe around 1 to 3 inches in northern New Jersey, but New York City, I wouldn't necessarily expect much of any snowfall accumulation, as it seems like the temperature will be just a little bit too warm. The low pressure system is a little bit too close, and the sea surf temperatures are a little bit too warm for New York City to experience precipitation, at least much in the form of snowfall. It should be a little bit of wintry mix with maybe some snowfall, but the heavier snowfall will be well to the north, so it's not very likely that New York City will experience much, if any, snowfall accumulation from this storm. So as Philadelphia, maybe northern New Jersey could get involved with anywhere from 1 to 3 to 6 inches of snow, but most of the snow should be in the interior northeast. But we do see the pressure drop down to 970 978 millibars, as coastal flooding, I'll say, is likely along the eastern coast of New England, which includes the Nantucket area. This includes portions just south of Boston, as well as Rhode Island maybe could get involved with some coastal flooding, as it seems like, though, as the winds will be very strong associated with this storm with a pressure this low, because all the air pressure surrounding it is going to want to filter into where the air pressure is very low. It's equivalent to draining a hole in a big body of water. All that higher pressure water is going to want to filter into where there's less pressure, and that will allow the wind speed and the velocity to increase surrounding the center of circulation. So the wind speed will create the possibility of a strong coastal flooding event for New England, and eventually this should move out by the late Wednesday timeframe of New England. That's when you should expect the impacts to definitely wind down, as the storm will eventually move eastward like it should, along with the westerly winds. And at this point, it seems like the GFS model is also very in high agreement with this forecast, which definitely raises the certainty that this storm will take this sort of approach. Let's take a look at a GFS model real quick. Taking a look at the GFS model forecast, we do see that the storm will eventually move southeastward as a result of a ridge that's expected to build along the west coast. That's going to bring a stronger northerly flow to push this low pressure system further to the southeast, and continuing to move forward with the forecast. Of course, that will create a more unstable environment, because behind this low pressure system there's plenty of cold air, and since this ridge is building, we're going to see a strong northerly flow to bring that Arctic air further southward, and that's going to interact with the warmer air mass located right up along the eastern coast of the southeast, and that will create just enough of an unstable environment for this storm to potentially rapidly intensify as it approaches New England. And what's interesting is that the GFS model is sort of going what the European model been stating in the earlier ones, where now the GFS model wants to take a more stronger storm right up along the coast of New England than the European model, which is definitely different from what we've been seeing, because simply the European model was taking the more stronger approach, but now the GFS model is taking the more stronger approach, with the millibar pressure dropping down to 972 millibars, which is equivalent to very powerful hurricanes, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see blizzard conditions. So we see a very similar forecast, and however there are still some differences. Like the GFS model still wants to bring heavier snowfall to the Boston area in the later runs, and we see that this storm is still a little bit further northward than the European model's scenario, but for the most part it's bringing snowfall to a lot of the same areas, so I wouldn't expect much differences between the two computer models when it comes to snowfall accumulation. So if you're under heavy snowfall accumulation, it's time to prepare, because it's unlikely we're going to see any major variations with the forecast at this point when we're less than 72 hours out from this event. So you need to prepare accordingly throughout New England and portions of the interior Northeast. This is a GFS's model's forecast for this current snowstorm, and we do see that in a lot of these areas in the northern Midwest, you've already experienced snowfall that's very similar to what the GFS model has been forecasting as a storm, as the GFS model is still showing the runs that have already passed in time. So in a lot of these areas, you shouldn't expect much snow, such as in northern Minnesota and North Dakota, as the worst of the snow has passed just to the east of you guys. But taking a look at the Northeast, we do see that the GFS model still wants to bring a very heavy amount of snowfall to the Boston area, where Boston would experience over a foot of snow. But it's good to point out that GFS model is definitely a little bit too aggressive with this forecast. Typically, what the ratio of 1 inch of rain equating to 10 inches of snow isn't necessarily a ratio that you need to go by all the time, because each snowstorm is different, and it seems like Boston will experience more like 3 to 6 inches of snow from this storm system. But in upstate New York and in western Massachusetts, as well as the extreme northwestern portions of Connecticut, you could experience over a foot of snow. And we do see that that for New York City and Philadelphia, you guys are pretty much experiencing little to no snowfall accumulation at all, as the GFS model is more confident that the heavier snowfall will be to the north of you guys. But if you're in the purple and even in the darker shades of blue, you need to prepare for a significant snowstorm moving through those areas. Taking a look at the European model's forecast, it's very similar to what the GFS model is stating. For the most part, the heaviest snowfall should be in upstate New York and western Massachusetts, where you could experience over a foot of snow. In New York City and Philadelphia, again, are experiencing maybe an inch of snow in the European model scenario. And then Boston is experiencing less snowfall, which I do believe is more accurate in this scenario, where Boston would experience maybe close to 8 inches of snow from this snowstorm. I'd expect a little bit less than that, more like 3 to 6 inches in the Boston area. And then we do see that a large area of Pennsylvania and a lot of these areas in the Midwest already experienced the worst of the snowfall. But Chicago, expect maybe 1-3 inches of snow for tonight. So make sure to watch out for that for your Saturday morning commute. But the heaviest snowfall, of course, should be in the interior Northeast, where you should expect snowfall well over a foot. And remember about those gusty winds as well, right up along the coast, especially where right up along the coast of New England and Long Island and even coastal New Jersey, you could experience wind gusts in between 50 to 60 miles per hour, which is capable of bringing some tree branches down and causing some isolated power outages. So you want to pay close attention to that possibility and make sure to bring those loose things inside, because those could easily be projectiles that could damage your property. So make sure to be aware of that possibility as you approach the early week. Taking a look at the Futurecast radar to show you guys when you should expect the snowfall in a lot of these areas. So in Chicago, the snow should last pretty much through the overnight hours into early Sunday morning. Before this storm eventually will fizzle out a little bit, we still will see some light snowfall in Wisconsin and the extreme eastern portions of Minnesota, before we're going to see the storm intensify again as we approach the very early morning hours on Monday. That's when we really should see the storm rapidly intensify by the Monday timeframe, and we should see mostly rain for the most part throughout New Jersey and New York, before eventually we're going to see that change over to snow in upstate New York later on Monday and into early Tuesday. So you want to pay close attention to that when it comes to timing. So here's my current snowfall forecast all throughout the northern Midwest as well as the Northeast. So in the higher elevations of upstate New York and the extreme western portions of Massachusetts, you should expect over a foot of snow, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's localized areas of over 2 feet of snow. And a large area, almost the entirety of upstate New York, could expect potentially over a foot of snow, or at least over 6 inches of snow. And we do see that this snow could extend into Maine as well, a lot of Vermont and New Hampshire. And as for the bigger cities, Boston should maybe expect around 3 inches of snow, 3 to 6 inches of snow. It might be shaded in the light blue, but it should be shaded in the darker blue, as you should expect 3 to 6 inches of snow in the Boston area, as the backside of the storm should bring heavier snowfall to you guys. And for New York City and Philadelphia, expect little to no snowfall accumulation, as the snowfall should be just to the north of you guys in this scenario. But don't rule out the possibility of some snowflakes falling in right around the Tuesday time frame, and be prepared for gusty winds and coastal flooding all along the coast and even further inland, where you could experience gusts between 40 to 60 miles per hour, which could cause power outages. So make sure to be aware of that possibility. But I thank you guys for watching, and make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content.